How you doing, y'all? Welcome to Confidence. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to get the power back. You know, you have this person, maybe they're acting hot and cold. Maybe you don't really have them at all. Maybe you have a piece of them. Maybe you're in a situationship. Maybe you're single and you're just struggling to move past somebody. I don't really know what your situation is, but today we're going to be talking about how to fucking get your shit back on track. Honest. And it's a very difficult thing to do because when we're going through, I would call it minor rejection, or we're dealing with somebody who's giving us like a little piece of them, it's very difficult to show up, be confident, and to know your worth and to show back up for yourself and feel really good. And honestly, potentially get the relationship back on track. But in order to get the relationship back on track, you first need to take the power back. You first need to start believing in yourself. And I have some steps to taking the power back from somebody that is only giving a piece of them to you. And then we're going to get into two audience questions. Both kind of semi-relate to getting the power back. One is going to be talking about what happens after they do come back. And the second part is somebody where they've got back into this relationship, but the relationship isn't quite exactly what they want. And we're going to deep dive that situation. But let's just get into it. Honestly, I'm ready to go. I had a coaching call today and it really inspired me for this podcast because I have this coachee. She's been talking to this guy and pretty much this guy has pretty much told her already that he doesn't want a relationship. He doesn't really see anything with her, but they're still around each other. They still hang out. And what I've been trying to help her with is how do we shift this, right? How does she stop sleeping with him? How does she stop, showing up for this person that she knows is not it, but she just can't seem to get herself out of that little rut? So I'm going to talk to you guys about kind of the steps that I gave her. And yeah, let's just get right into it. So really, the question I'm going to be attacking today is, how do you get the power back from someone who is only giving you a piece of themselves? So first thing is first, right? Number one, we got to take them off the pedestal. This is a human being, just like me and you, flesh and bones. It goes to sleep, has to take a shit, has to do all the regular human things that we do. They also have anxiety. They also, have their own fears, anxieties, characteristics that make them them. But again, they are just like me and you. They are not better or more important than you. And that is massive for you to realize. I want you to kind of take it back. Because honestly, for a lot of people I work with, what they tell me is like, yeah, when I first met them, I didn't even really like them that much. I swear to God, I hear that from every single woman I coach. It's always just like, yeah, I didn't even really find them that attractive or they weren't really that cool. And then all of a sudden, right, that person shows you this energy. They're consistent with you. They get you on the hook. And then next thing you know, you get the classic story of like, well, they wanted me first, right? They wanted me first. I didn't even want them first. And then, somehow you gain this attachment to them. You end up falling in love with them. And then ultimately they tell you they're not ready for something. They act hot and cold. They're fucking avoidant. We don't really know what exactly the reason is. But ultimately, it shifts. There was a time where you were holding your boundaries and, again, they were just a boy, right? Or they were just a girl, right? It's for either gender, anybody that's going through this. And then somewhere along the lines, it kind of feels like, things slip. They kind of have you by the balls. And I think something that we really forget and just perspective, like the first thing I just really want to share is like, that they are that same person that you met when you first met them. They're not any more important than they were then. You have just created this romanticized fantasy of how much, how important or how valuable they are to you. And this isn't to put them down, right? Because that's not what it's about. It's not about, I don't want taking the power back to become an ego game. It's not about ego. We got to relinquish that. It's just about seeing them as another human being that also has challenges, seeing them as another human being that also has fears, desires, wants, just like you. And you have to really reframe your mind to that. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of the times we romanticize and we're like, oh my God, they're so special. And half the time I ask the people, why is that? Like, I don't really know. And a lot of times what I hear too is like, I don't know, there's a lot of characteristics about them that I don't really love. How is it that every single time we're attached to somebody, it's always somebody that for some reason we know is not a good fit for us, right? There's characteristics or qualities about them that we always complain about, but we want their love. And I think we want their love because why, right? They're rejecting us. They're making us feel less than. And what happens is inadvertently, because they start rejecting us and they make us feel like we're not good enough because they're not giving us the thing that we want, we automatically start raising up their value, right? We put them on a pedestal. Their status is better than us somehow. So the first thing is just try to separate it and just try to take a step back and look at them from a bigger lens and just be like, it's just a boy. He's just a boy, and she's just a girl, just like you. And we have to create that separation and just start to create that picture of like, okay, this is just another person in my life. But anyways, let's get to the bigger things, right? I think the thing that really keeps a lot of people stuck in this dynamic is we have this story that we're telling ourselves that if we hang on to the pieces, that eventually things are going to get better, right? We hold on to this hope that if we hold on to the little bit that we have of them, at some point it's going to start to grow, right? Or it's going to come back, right? Oh, if I just stay around, or if I just show them my value, then they're just automatically one day going to turn around and be like, nope, you're the shit, right? But the truth is, that's just not how it works, right? Because you're just accepting something that you don't want. And we've talked about this even on the last podcast with the anxious attachment, right? Because that's what we see a lot in that dynamic is, anxious people, they hold on. They think like, oh man, if I just do a little bit more, if I just earn, right? If I could just stay here, something is going to change. But that's not the truth. Nothing changes if you don't change. Like, and that's the thing too. It's like we want to change the other person's perception of us, but we're not actually changing our own behavior that we're showing up in the relationship in, right? If you keep showing up and accepting the crumbs and accepting the pieces, that's all you're going to get. It's never going to elevate more than that. There is no additional hope for that relationship until you see it for what it is, which is they are just a person and they're just giving you a sliver. And accepting that sliver is not the thing that's going to get them back to you, right? So we got to fucking take the pieces away. And that is the biggest thing I'm going to even say about all of this too, is you have to really make the mental decision that you want more. And you got to be dedicated to that. So the other thing too is what I think most people are avoiding in this situation is what? We're avoiding the pain of losing them, of fully not having them in our life. And that's really scary. And for a lot of people that are in this dynamic where they're kind of chasing somebody, I think the hardest part is you feeling like you will be left with nothing, right? You're going to have nothing to stand on. You're going to feel intense amount of pain. And to be honest, you're not wrong. That is the truth. And that's why we get stuck in this dynamic. I want you to understand that, right? Because, a lot of people mentally know this stuff. They're like, I know that this isn't enough, right? Like I'm dealing with my coachee. She's like, I know it's not good for me to have it, but it's just really hard when it's in my face. It's really hard when they text me. It's really hard when we're around each other because it's just so easy. It's just so comfortable, right? And again, it's that hope. It's that hope that if we just hang around and we're just here, eventually that they're going to just figure shit out. But that's the thing is what's really happening is your mind is actually protecting you from the painful reality. And that's what we call denial, right? That's what it is. You're in denial. And that's what's happening with my coachee and with anybody that's struggling with this dynamic. The thing is, your brain is trying to protect you from that pain that you feel like is going to happen if you lose them, right? So what happens is our brain's like, well, you know what? It's okay, right? Like this behavior, this person, what they're giving you is okay. Let's accept this because it's going to be easier than actually getting uncomfortable and experiencing that really deep pain. And I think for a lot of people too, and I see this a lot with the people I work with, right? You have a pattern. You have a pattern of getting into relationships with people, them not giving you everything you want, you holding on to the relationship, and the only way that that relationship leaves your life is if that person ends up rejecting you. That person ends up leaving you. And then what? Then you finally feel that pain, the pain that you are avoiding by holding on. And that's the thing too. It's like we cling so tightly because we don't want to feel that, right? Like the way I fucking look at it, I was going to give a weird analogy of like, you know, you're just like hanging on to a sinking ship and you know it's going to go down into the water and you don't want to fucking drown. So you're just fucking holding on for dear life to this thing because you think that that's what's going to get you to safety. But really what you need to do is you need to dive in. You need to take the leap into the ocean and you need to start swimming. You need to start going in the uncomfortable direction. And again, like I said, it's very challenging because what's really happening is our mind is trying to protect us. So that's why it's not a bad thing. It's like you just need to recognize my mind is shifting me towards comfort, right? It feels like if I just hold on to this, then I won't actually drown, right? If I just hold on to this, I won't experience that pain of truly fully losing them. But what you need to remind yourself of is like that pain is inevitable. And the more that you hold on, whether you do it, whether you take the leap and you say, I'm going to experience this pain consciously, or you wait long enough till the other person rejects you and you experience it then. And I tell the people that I work with, I'm like, it's a lot easier to go through with this when it's on your time. When you could consciously make the decision that you want to go through that hardship and face the reality, that's where the growth happens. And actually, to me, it's less painful because you're making the decision for yourself. When you don't make the decision for yourself, to me, it's way harder. It's way more difficult. And I understand sometimes maybe it might feel easier because then you're not left with the responsibility of the decision. But if you don't ever make that decision for yourself, what happens? And this is where the pattern of that happens in your life, right? Where again, if you look back at your relationships and the only time you could ever leave somebody is if they leave you, you have never taken responsibility for choosing yourself. Do you see what I'm saying? And this is why you're stuck in that dynamic constantly. Because you're always afraid of people leaving you, and you're always afraid of heartbreak, and you're always afraid of pain, and you know it's coming because you've felt it before. And that's the thing. That's the reason you're avoiding it so hard, because you know that pain. You know how much that sucks, right? It's like, again, my coachee today, she's like talking about how, I don't want to feel that. I don't want to feel the heartbreak. I don't want to feel what it feels like to just separate. Because I've been through it before and it fucking hurts and it sucks. But then I turn around and I'm like, but the problem is like, it's inevitable. You either choose to do it yourself or you let the situation dictate, having it done for you. And why would you do that to yourself? Because all you're doing is suffering. You're living in suffering when you're dealing with a dynamic like this. And I understand, and trust me, I get it, right? Like, here's the thing. You're not a bad person for holding on. You're not a bad person for wanting that safety. You're not a bad person for hoping that things will change. And we all do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm guilty of that. I mean, my previous situation, it was exactly like that. I knew that the dynamic wasn't right. I knew that the situation, I wasn't getting my needs met, but what was happening? I was holding on to the pieces of it. And then eventually to the point where I kept holding on and coming back and clinging on to the comfort, and then wham, right? They end up rejecting you. They end up hurting you. And then you're really in the shit. And then you're really in the gutter. And it's even worse. But if I were able to consciously choose and say, you know what? I'm going to endure that suffering, right? I'm going to endure that pain that I'm avoiding. Then you have a little bit of power. Then you have a little bit of trust in yourself. Then you have a little bit of momentum into that pain. And that's really important because, again, you're not avoiding it. And here's the other thing, too, is think about the old heartbreaks that you have gone through. Like, I know that it's painful, right? It is. It fucking sucks. When you look back and you're like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. With the coachee, right, that I was talking to today, she was talking about, like, yeah, it was really hard. But I told her, I was like, okay, tell me what happened, right? Give me the story of exactly one of your past heartbreaks. What exactly happened? It was like, boy meets girl, same dynamic, right? She likes this guy. He pushes her away. She holds on for dear life. He only is giving her a sliver. Eventually, he's the one who ends up meeting somebody else, leaves her in the dust, and then she feels like shit. But then ultimately, she's like, yeah, I go through this intense pain. And then what happens is eventually that pain forces me to change. I end up meeting somebody new, and then that person starts to hit me back up. Every single time, she told me, every single time I go through heartbreak and I finally make the decision that I don't want to be with that person anymore, it's done. And what's crazy is what happens as soon as she makes that mental decision, what happens? The other person comes back. The old person finally comes back into your life. And that's what's crazy. And this is what I've been telling her, about taking the power back from somebody. You are one decision away from changing the entire dynamic of the relationship. But the problem is you don't want to take that leap, right? You got to be willing to say, this isn't enough. The relationship is dead. The pieces are not the whole thing. And that's the reality that you need to orient yourself to. Because that's like the hardest part, I really truly believe, is like the other thing too is, and we talked about this on the last podcast too, where I was talking about, I don't want to, I was telling you how like the girls are like, I don't want to lose them. I don't want to lose them. And then I was like, well, you don't even really have him. And that's the belief that you have to have in your mind. And so that's what I'm telling her. I'm like, she's like, I'm holding on to this hope that things are going to change. I'm like, but you don't even have him right now. You don't have him right now. You don't have them fully. If you don't have them fully, you don't have them at all. That's what it is. And you have to make that decision in your head. You have to write that down. I said to her, I was like, write down the next time you hang out with him, or you're in the friend group and they're around. I was like, write down on your hand, I don't have him. I'm not with that person anymore. They don't want to be with me. That is not mine. I do not have it. You have to tell yourself that. And it doesn't even need to be forever. It's not like, here's the other thing too. It's like, she was like making this, like, I have to just make the decision that I'll never be with them ever again. I was like, why do you need to do that? It doesn't have to be a forever decision. All you know is that right now, today you don't have them. Today they are telling you that you are not enough. Today they are telling you that, again, you guys are not together. And that's what you need to say. Say, okay, so I have to react to the reality that I have today. And today it says, I'm not with you. And if I'm not with you, I need to act accordingly. I can't hold on to this hope. I can't hold on to the pieces. I have to fully commit myself to me not having you. Here's the other place that people also get stuck though. And here's to me, the biggest step is you need to challenge your belief that there are no other good people out there. I find that with people that are stuck in this dynamic constantly, that's a belief that we have in our minds. And that's what she's telling me on the phone, right? We're talking about this and she's just like, it's just so hard. There's just not a lot of good people. I go outside and I just don't see a lot of people that I'm interested in. And I'm like, that's interesting. And it's funny because when she told me the story about the guy that she met that she's currently sad about, what did she tell me? She said, I didn't even really find him that dope. He wasn't really that attractive to me. Interesting. And this is where that belief comes into play. Because if you were holding on to this belief that there are no good people out there, the problem is you're going to make it so hard for yourself to leave a bad situation. Because all you're doing is you're trapping yourself into this relationship because you keep telling yourself that there's no other good people out there. And you really need to challenge that belief. Because why is the person that you're talking to so good? And think about, again, the beginning of when you met this person that you're swooning over. Were you head over heels for them immediately off the jump? I mean, for some people, yes. But for other people, it's like, no, they kind of grew on me a little bit. But that is part of it. Sometimes that really does happen. But what you really need to understand and what you really need to take the mindset shift of is you have to start taking risks in order to meet somebody new. Think about the story that you're telling yourself. You're essentially telling yourself that this is what is available to you in life. And that's not fair. There's plenty of good people out there. And that's what's so interesting too, because when she told me this story about how she met this guy in the first place, she even said, "Oh, I wish I can go back to the beginning when he was just whatever to me. I didn't even really like him that much at first. He was the one that put in all the effort to do it. And now I'm the one that's trapped." I'm like, you want to know why he wasn't that good enough from the beginning? It's actually because you have this belief. It's because you have this belief that there are not a lot of good people out there. And what you're doing is you are inadvertently like protecting yourself, but you're also bringing a sense of lack to your life because you're not allowing yourself to be available to potential other opportunities. And that's where I feel like a lot of people in this are getting so stuck. Is because when you are so picky or when you really feel that there's just no one out there that can meet your expectations or meet your standards, it just pigeonholes yourself because that's when you latch on to people where you've built up that chemistry. But the thing is, that's the thing is like with each new partner, doesn't it kind of feel the same way? It's almost just like you're so resistant to meeting them and it's the person that really love bombs you and gets in that is the only people that are allowed in. Because you're really trying to shield yourself and inadvertently you're just telling yourself these things. And that's the thing too, is I was telling her, I'm like, you're the one that's creating that belief. That's not true. You know what I'm saying? If you told yourself, yo, there are good people out there. There are people that can meet my expectations. There are people that can meet my needs. That's going to push you to be able to take risks. And that's what I told her, right? So this was the boundary that we were going to set, right? So we're going to take this power back from this guy. And this is how we're going to do it. The reality is as soon as she makes the decision that they're done and she makes the decision that she's going to start looking for something else and that there are good people out there, what's going to happen to the dynamic? And what has happened in every dynamic that you've ever been in, that you've ever experienced, that heartbreak? Over time, you focus on new things, you finally get through that pain, you meet somebody new, and the old person comes back. The power comes back. And that's what you need to remember. And through all of this is that you can make that decision that they've lost you. If you've shown up genuine and you've shown up real and you've tried and they're telling you no, accept it. Accept it. There's power in accepting that they are not part of your life right now. There is power in saying, all right, you know what? They might not be it, but there's some good fucking people out there and I'm going to give it my best shot to meet them. And I am going to meet that person. And there are good people out there. And watch your fucking world change and watch the dynamic between you and that person change. I'm telling you, it's a tale as old as time. I think about my situation right now. Like right now, it's weird. I'm single. You know, it's like I have been taking a lot of time for myself. I haven't met my person yet, but I know it's coming. But I know that I can meet people. I went out this past weekend and yes, I haven't found success in terms of finding my person or finding somebody I have this high interest in, but I'm taking risk. I'm going out there. I'm talking to people. I'm meeting people. I'm getting somebody's Instagram. I'm shooting the DM. And these are the things that we're avoiding. This is the work and the uncomfortable shit that we are avoiding by sitting in a dynamic where we're getting pieces. We're avoiding the pain of not having them, and we're avoiding the work that it's going to take to meet somebody new. And it's because we tell ourselves that there's not a lot of good people out there. So we shut ourselves off from that avenue of taking risks. But that's what it is. That's the part that you need to go into and lean into. And trust me, it feels so good when you start doing that. Next thing you know, what's going to happen is all of a sudden it's going to start feeling a little bit different. The dynamic you have with that person, they might start hitting you up more. And then all of a sudden you start meeting these new people and you start feeling this energy like, whoa, wait a minute, I am attractive. There are good people out here. It's all fucking mindset. It has nothing to do with your looks. It has nothing to do with any of those things. It has everything to do with the way that you're looking at the situation and the way that you're looking at your life. If you believe that you can meet somebody great out there, you're going to do it. But the problem is you're in this series of meeting people, you feeling like you're not enough, them hurting you, you would then avoiding the pain of losing them and then having to do it all over again. But what's fucking crazy is when you look back at your history, haven't you gone through heartbreak? Yes. Are you still here? Yes. Have you endured those heartbreaks? Yes. Have you always met new people? Yes. Yes. That's what's crazy. If you look back, you do have that ability, but you are shutting yourself off from that by the stories that you're telling yourself. So if you're going to take the power back, you got to shift the mindset. And I know it's very hard when we're feeling rejected and down, but that's why it's so important to set that boundary and say, no, this is done. Right now, you are not my person. Go be happy. You are just a person. You are not anything more special than I am. I know I could find somebody that's going to fucking show up for me. I know that I'm going to find somebody that's going to be consistent. I know that I could find somebody attractive, but you got to believe that. And that's how you shift the dynamic. And you can fucking do it, but you got to make the decision. That's the problem for a lot of people is like, they're just like, oh, well, and this is my coach, right? I'm going to try. I'll see what I can do. It's just like, no, you want to take the power back? Make the decision today. Just say today, no, it's done. It is done. I am over it. And maybe you're not fully over it underneath feelings wise, but decisions wise. And here's the thing, the right decisions bring the right feelings. And that's what we don't understand. We let our feelings drive us. We got to let our minds, our decisions drive us. Because if we make the right choices, the uncomfortable choices, and that's the thing, the right choices are usually pretty fucking uncomfortable to make, we're going to get the feelings that we want. If you want that feeling of security, give it to yourself. You give it to yourself by setting that boundary. You give it to yourself by saying no to the crumbs. You give it to yourself by taking the risks and telling yourself that there are good fucking people out there. And that's how you change. You take the dynamic and you shift it. So that's what we're actually going to see in the first question. So somebody submitted a question and they said, what if I ended this long-term situationship and it took losing me for the other person to realize how he felt for me? She said, we did rekindle after some time, and this time I put my foot down and gave him an ultimatum, and he finally asked me to be his girlfriend. Isn't that fucking wild? Isn't that fucking wild? This is exactly what I'm telling you. It's literally everything I'm telling you, but just in a question. Which is, okay, she's now even asking me, she's asking the question to me, like, should she be okay with that? She's now even thinking to herself, do I even allow this person back into my life? I put that boundary down. I said the pieces weren't enough. And what happened? They come back. She took the power back. And you know what? This is a tricky question. And to be honest, I guess my thing is this, is like, honestly, I think it does sometimes take this for people to recognize what they have. But I think for you in particular, right, if you're trying to take the power back, you need to understand that you haven't been presenting your most confident version of yourself. And in my history with coaching people, that's what really a relationship is you need to take care of your own self-worth. And sometimes when we're accepting shit that we don't want to, we don't recognize how unattractive that is. And we don't recognize that it's really not the other person. And sometimes it really is about us. And we're not setting those boundaries. And now it is confusing when you do set that boundary with somebody and they do come back to you. You're like, is this what it took for you to recognize my worth? And I'm like, sometimes it's a simple answer is, yeah, it's true. And I don't know if you could fault somebody. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like, it's obviously up to you to make that decision of whether or not you feel like that's good. But this to me is a natural progression of a lot of relationships. Believe it or not, I have seen so many relationships that I've worked with personally where it is kind of like a self-worth struggle, right? It is kind of a power struggle. A lot of relationships start off like this. And think about the dynamic we were just talking about with the girl, how her belief is there's not a lot of good people out there. And because of that, the only people that come into her life are the people that are swooning over her. So what's the power dynamic there? The guy cares more than you do. And then all of a sudden it flips. And then it has to almost bring equilibrium, right? The equilibrium of it is now you set your boundary and you say, hey, I'm not going to be here if you're not going to fully commit yourself to me. And then the dynamic starts to even out. And that's where I see a lot of relationships live, is you have to have that equilibrium of self-worth. You both have to perceive each other as worthy. And I think the only way you perceive each other as worthy is sometimes you do need to stand your ground. There are times in a relationship where, yeah, it is going to be hot and cold and a little bit rocky. I truly believe that. But can you get on the same page? And here's the thing I would say, if for this person that you're allowing back into your life, right? You have this dynamic where he asked you to be his girlfriend. Now that you've put your foot down, you just got to make sure you always enforce your boundaries. I don't know if that's a wrong thing about life. I think that just is life. It is hard. It's almost like a negotiation. You know what I'm saying? It's like a business negotiation, right? It's like, yeah, sometimes you're going to meet somebody and you're not going to want to pay that price, but then eventually they hold their ground and you realize that you do want that service. I think this is just natural. I don't think that you could hold it against somebody for realizing it later. I mean, I guess you could. And I guess here's what I would do, right? So if it was me and somebody was trying to come back into my life, I would just make sure that my needs are going to get met. I would turn around and say, oh, okay, you want to be in my life again? You want to date me again? Now all of a sudden that I held my boundary with you, you want to show up? Well, guess what? You're only coming back into my life if you're willing to fulfill the needs that I want, right? So I look at my previous situation and I'd be like, well, I need to see you. You didn't want to see me before. If you want to change this dynamic, then we need to spend quality time together. You want to come back into my life? Well, it's going to look different. And that's what happened with this girl, right? It's like, I don't think there's anything wrong about letting that person back in and asking you to be his girlfriend, because if you wanted commitment and they just didn't want to give it to you, yeah, guess what? The only way you're coming back in here is if you're going to be willing to commit. And I guess that's the hard thing about it too. It's like very strange and weird that it's like that. But again, to me, it just is. And I could sit here and say like, be on my high and mighty, right? And you could too, but you probably also have made your fair share of mistakes in the relationship. So to me, it's about actually forgiving the other person, but also just being really good about your boundaries. And I find that's like, what happens for a lot of people in relationships. And this is what happens for a lot of the coachees that I coach. So think about what we just talked about, which is it takes some time to negotiate to get that full commitment, right? That's what we do. We work on your self-worth. We work on your boundaries. Eventually that person that you're swooning over, you stop swooning over, they come back into your life, you get the commitment. And that's where once you get the commitment, the work doesn't actually end either, right? Your boundaries still need to be enforced throughout the relationship. You constantly need to make sure that the other person knows you're worthy. And the other person knows you're worthy by you holding them accountable for your needs. And I think that's essentially what we're talking about in this, question and the power back and all of this in general. Is like you have to be the one that enforces your needs getting met. And the right people and the people that are supposed to be in your life, sometimes they might run away for a little while. Sometimes they might need to go do something else for a little while. And you have the decision on whether or not you want to let them back in or not. But, you set the price. And some people are going to be willing to pay that eventually, maybe even old partners. But again, you then need to enforce that price throughout the dynamic, right? Throughout the relationship. You cannot forget about that. And to me, it's all about vulnerable, honest, good communication. If you could communicate your needs constantly, if you could hold up good boundaries constantly, not allow BS, hold them accountable, but still be open and understanding that they're a human being, that to me is when you've really got it. That to me is when you're really in your fucking shit. That to me is when you're really in your full self-confidence. And that to me is when you really get the relationship that you want. That is when you get the power back. That is, to me, again, I don't want to sit here and say, is it like bad that he had to realize, by losing you that he wanted you? I'm going to be like, yo, that's part of life. To be honest, some people don't know what they got until it's gone. Truth. And you could hold that against them. True. You could. You absolutely could. There's nothing wrong with you doing that. But you could also potentially have something good with somebody like that too, because now they realize that you mean fucking business. And if you guys had love there and there was good chemistry there, to me, I don't know. I think I would consider it if they were, again, willing to show up and meet my needs. But I would have to be very clear on that. You know what I'm saying? I have to be very clear about what I fucking wanted. Yo, I need to see you. Or yo, Hey, the texting, I didn't really like this. Hey, like, before you were really hot and cold. If you're hot and cold again, I'm not going to sit here and do that. That's the stuff that needs to be communicated. And again, if they are willing to agree to it and then their actions show that they're willing to do it, my whole thing is why not? Why not? Again, I've seen most of the relationships I've ever coached, it kind of goes in that dynamic, to be honest. A lot of them. You have to work to get to that point. All right. Last question. This girl said, I was dating my ex for a couple of years. I do have a daughter, and he was heavily involved with both of our lives pretty much every day. I have asked a couple times throughout the relationship if he would ever take the next step in living together. He always answered, I don't know. I never pushed the subject until pretty recently. He said that he would rather be alone and that he will never live with anyone. Oh shit. He currently lives with his mom. And I even asked to the point of if his mom passed, would he let us move in with him in his house? And he said no. So at that point, I made a determination for us to separate since we did not have the same end goals. Makes sense. Needs not getting met. Since then, we have continuously texted each other every day, in which I've also tried to be distant. But he still texts me every single day, and we've hung out a few times. But it's just so confusing because I even asked if we can go back to what we were before, and he won't because we don't have the same end goal. But yet he still texts me every single day and hangs out with me, etc. So she's in this situation where she told this guy, hey, I want to live together. This guy's pretty much just like, no, I want to be alone, right? That's the dynamic that I want. I don't want to live with you. Ultimately, she's like, okay, well, we don't have the same end goal. Like, I like you and I want to be with you. We're together for years, but I want to be with somebody that lives with me. So they end the relationship and they keep talking. And so this is also, again, where we're holding on to the pieces, right? And this is where it gets really difficult because he's also the one that's putting in the work. She's saying that he's the one that's like texting her all the time and still keeping the relationship, right? He's doing the maintenance that he already was doing prior. But the problem is the end goal still isn't there. The need that you deeply want is still not being met. And that's what's crazy too, is that after all of this, you're then asking him to go back to the same dynamic that you had before, which he's telling you no. So what are we holding on here? You know what I'm saying? Why are we holding on to this? And this we're talking about, right? Taking the power back. You have to understand, like, I understand this guy might be really great and he's helped you in a lot of ways. But again, don't you want that end goal? The problem is not going to go away. And that's the thing is, if he is unwilling to budge on that need, this is where we need to stop. This is where we need to tell ourselves, yo, I have to let go. I have to fully set that boundary and say, nah, I'm not doing this. It's crazy to me how this is what happens for a lot of people. And again, you built up so many years with him. I understand that there's care there. And I understand how hard it must be when they're coming back to you and they're in your life. But again, it's the avoidance of the pain, is it not? It's avoidance of the reality. And that's what you really need to tell yourself. What's the reality? The reality is our end goals don't align. And you have to tell yourself, do I need that? Yes or no? And if that answer is yes, this is done. This is cooked. We got to let this person go. And even if they're texting us, we got to say, yo, I appreciate you texting me, but we don't have the same end goal. And I understand why you want to hold on because, again, what is it? We're holding on to this hope that things are going to be different. We're not allowing ourselves to see the reality. We're not allowing ourselves to face the pain of what is. And that's the thing too. It's like you have to believe, and this is again where the belief of, are there other good people out there that can meet my needs? If you don't believe that, this is how you get stuck. That's why I said that is the really the core of that. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. You have to believe that there's somebody out there that is going to be willing to show up and do the things that he's doing, but also wants to live with you. This can't be just it for you. And that's what's crazy is that he tells you that truth. He tells you his truth. And then all of a sudden you want to cling back on to what you had. You want to cling back on to, hey, can we at least get back to what we were before? Why? All you ask for is like, can I just get back the pieces I already had? You're giving me more of a crumb or less of a crumb than what I already had. But to me, this is all mindset. It's the mindset that we're not going to discover more. We're not going to find more out there. And that's what keeps us stuck in this dynamic. And to me, that's what I'm trying to tell you. The secret to getting your power back is to believe that there's somebody else out there that could fulfill your needs. And the only way that we get to that person, and here's the thing too, I do understand that fear. It's weird. I wrote down, one of my biggest fears in my life is that I won't meet the right person. And I think we all have that fear, right? I think we all have this fear that our person is not out there. But we have to look that fear in the face and say, okay, how do I address this? How do I overcome this? And what I wrote down next to it is, right, because I was like, okay, how do I take action on this? The only way to overcome worry or anxiety or negative thinking is positive, purposeful action, right? That's it. That's all you can do is take action in the direction that you need to go. And for this fear in particular, what is the action? The action is taking the risk to meet new people. And what I wrote down for me too is like, if I see an attractive person online or offline, I am making a promise to myself to shoot the shot, to say something, to take the risk, to put myself out there. You have to believe that that person is out there. And yes, it does take fucking work to meet that person. Sorry. Again, I wish there was a shortcut, but it's uncomfortable. Going through the pain of separating from this guy is going to be uncomfortable. Meeting somebody new, taking those risks is going to be uncomfortable. But you know what's more uncomfortable? Sitting in a dynamic with somebody where you know you're not going to get your needs met. And what you're doing is you're just prolonging the suffering. You're prolonging the inevitable. It's inevitable that this relationship is not going to work out in the ways that you want it until you take the action. Until you take the responsibility for taking that risk, for setting the boundary, for telling yourself, hey, right now, this person is telling me that they're not willing to meet my needs, and I need to accept that. And if there's pain that's associated with that, I'd have to sit with that. And if there's risk that is associated with me meeting somebody else, and there's a mindset shift of me trying to explore new options, that's the stuff that I need to believe. That's the actions that I need to take. And what's funny is once you start taking those actions, even if you don't meet that next person, it's crazy to me because what will happen is the other person will see that you mean business. And sometimes, I'm not saying all the time, they might come back. They might give you what you need. This guy that's eluding you, that's telling you that he's unwilling to live with you, you would be fucking shocked that if you said, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not answering your texts. I'm not answering your calls. I'm saying no. You don't want to give me what I need, and I'm going to start looking elsewhere. You'd be fucking surprised on a phone call you might get being like, hey, I've really thought it over. You know what I'm saying? Think about the question we had before, you know, where she's like, I finally put my foot down and gave him the ultimatum, and what happened? Shit changed. You might get that phone call that says, oh, guess what? Actually, I've rethought about it. I'm actually probably down to live with you. And what's fucking, here's the most wild part, is you're one decision away from fucking doing that. You are one decision away from taking the power back. Do not let these people make you feel like you are not enough. Do not let these people make you feel like you can't get your needs met elsewhere. But they're not the ones that are doing that. You're doing it to yourself. You're doing it to yourself by believing that it's hard. You're doing it to yourself by believing it's impossible to meet somebody that can meet your needs. And if you challenge the fuck out of that belief and you have the abundance mindset and you look at it in the face and say, I am going to meet somebody new because I have in the past. That's the crazy part is in your entire life. If you look back at it, you've always met new people. Have you been forced to meet new people? Yeah, that's what usually happens, right? Usually you're forced to meet a new person because somebody fucking rejects you to the point of fucking crushing you. But why do we need to let it get to that point? Why do we need to let it get to the point of somebody fucking crushing you for you to make the fucking decision to say, no, I'm just going to endure the pain myself. I'm going to take the responsibility for making this choice, and I am going to find something better. I will find something better because guess what? I don't have a choice either way. You know what I'm saying? This is what's going to happen to you regardless. You might as well start the process now. You might as well end the bullshit now. Take the power back. You are worthy. You are beautiful. You do deserve somebody that's going to meet all of your needs, and it is out there. And I'm just telling you from my personal experience, like, yes, I haven't met the person that I'm supposed to be with yet, but I know it's coming. I know it's there. I could feel the energy. It's energy. I feel it. I know it. I see it when I'm out. I meet new people and I'm like, I know that they're attracted to me. I know that there's this energy, but it's because I believe it about myself, right? If you believe that you are worthy, if you believe that you are attractive, if you believe that you've got the sauce, people will come and they will want to take a taste. And that's how you get the power back. And that's how you fill yourself up with good, fucking confidence. And yes, are there days where I don't feel on 10? No. Are there days where I miss connection? Yes. Is there pain in being alone? Yeah, there is. There is. But you can handle it. That's the thing you need to tell yourself too. I can handle the pain. And that's what my coachee, the reason she gets so stuck is she tells herself, I'm just not ready for that pain yet. I'm not ready to let go yet. Okay, well then keep yourself there. But the reality is you're going to have to experience it sooner or later. And I'd rather you do it on your watch. And when you do it on when you make the decision to do it, it's a lot easier. And you show yourself that you're willing to choose yourself, which is powerful as fuck. And that's how you gain more confidence. So I hope through all of this, just the big underlying message is make the decision for yourself that there are good people out there, that you can say no to pieces, that you can say no to crumbs, and that you can get the power back, and you can change the dynamic of all of your relationships when you make that mental decision that you will only allow people in your life that are willing to meet your needs. All right. Well, if you ever want to work with me, you know where to find me. Love you guys, and I will talk to you very soon.